to the Talent Optimization Podcast, the go-to podcast for CEOs and HR professionals wanting to bridge the gap between the strategy and tactical implementation of talent optimization within their organizations. Through interviews, predictive index, and personal experience, your host, Tracy Shirk, helps you discover the facets of talent optimization from both a CEO and HR perspective to truly create the dream team for your organization. Are you ready? Let's get started.
Does the design of your organization have an impact on how your leaders lead inside the organization? You know, from our research and working with our clients and the research that we have done, the answer to that question is yes. And that is exactly what we are going to talk about today on episode number 74 of the Talent Optimization Podcast. My name is Tracy Shirk, and I'm the Chief Talent Officer here at Elevated Talent Consulting. And when we look at organizational design, how are our organizations designed? How are our teams designed? What does that look like? It's actually something that we have a tremendous amount of conversations about when we are working with leaders inside of organizations. And the question to that may be why? And here's the deal. If we don't have clarity over what it is that we are doing and how that specific project or task that we're doing links back to what the organization is doing and links back to our own personal values, we're probably not going to be very motivated to do it. One of the things that we think about when we look at structure, systems, and people as we're accomplishing these key goals is the old 80-20 rule, right? So, hey, what percentage of the work that we're doing is really having the most impact on those that we're serving? And what do we like doing? Let's face it. I don't know about you, but if I dig through my to-do list and I look at when I can kick things off and get them done really fast, there are things that are meaningful to me. They are things that I typically enjoy doing, or they're kind of at that edge of, I'm not sure if I can do it, but I think I can. And I want to prove to myself that I can. And when I see the eyeballs light up with the individuals that I'm working with, whether it is our team here at Elevated Talent, whether it's a client that we're working with, whether it's, I'm walking into an organization or after a speaking event and I hear someone say, hey, you know what? That thing that you said on your podcast was really meaningful to me, and here's how it impacted. Those are the things that have me really excited to continue to do really great work, right? And when we think about that, I want you to think about what that is for you. And if your organization design allows your people to be up-leveled to where they are doing their best work all the time. So we're going to kind of back into this. There was a McKinsey study that specifically looked at the most important steps that organizations specifically take to get the most mileage, right? And what they found, and this came from the defense industry, but what they found is the most important step for a procurement department is having a clear, compelling, and well-designed strategy. So when you design your organization, do you know exactly what it is that you are solving for? When you are looking specifically at your teams and at, your organizational structure, what are you designing for? And I'm going to challenge a bit the org structure that we have, which is the hierarchical organizational chart, right? And yes, we use org charts and we work with our clients on org charts because there's what's best known right now. But we know that goes back centuries, right? We've had organizational charts for centuries. And if you think about project design and when you design a project versus when you design an organizational chart, what's the difference, right? The difference is in those really complex organizational charts, we have a lot of bureaucracy, which means we're not getting things done and we're actually draining individuals' talents because we're not using them in the way that's going to move them forward. We spend, I think the last thing that I read was billions and billions of dollars on meetings every single year that aren't getting anything done. So how do we design our organizations in order to really get to what it is that we're trying to accomplish? So this starts with, what is your business strategy? And does every leader inside your organization understand how that business strategy links to the business results inside of the organization as a whole. And then let's go, down a level to each individual team. Does each team understand how the strategy that they're executing inside their specific team align back to what the business strategy is and those goals that organization's doing? And when we can look at this a little bit differently, instead of just, hey, financial numbers or whatever that is, and put it into a project perspective, this is something that Aaron Dignan talks about in Brave New Work. And that is specifically when we can look at things in terms of projects. What is the project that we're working on? It's a shorter period of time. We can see very clearly a beginning, a middle, and an end to every project. And yes, you can do this with accounting. You can say, hey, a P&L is a project. We're going to look at it on a monthly basis. We can do this if you're in construction. You can look at it by a job and say, every job is a project. We're going to look at it in this period of time. And we can even break it down further. If we're looking at, let's say, a construction project for building a home, we can look at it as far as the different phases of the project. We can look at it as far as the different parts of the home. There's many ways we can break it into projects. When we break it into projects, we can give individuals very specific deliverables that they have to hit within specific periods of time, a specific quantity in that process, right? So we have the quantity, we have the quality, and then we have a process. Those are key outcomes that we're going to look at. So when we're designing our organizations, we really want to think about how do we reduce the friction that has individuals get burnt out within that. When we can reduce that friction and increase the individual's own autonomy in decision making and ensure that they're kind of at that level where they can start to make some of those key decisions to move things forward. The first thing is we have to trust our people, right? So when we're designing our organization, are we instilling that culture of trust? Are we instilling a culture of transparency? Or are we, instilling this distrust of, I don't believe I can trust a guy to swing a hammer. I don't believe that I can trust somebody to actually go out and serve a client without double and triple checking this thing, right? We have to give them the ability to make mistakes. And when we make mistakes, we have to create a system or a structure where mistakes can be known to everyone inside the organization, so we can all up-level it so every single person isn't making that same mistake. So as we talk about how do we design our teams, and again, as leaders in the organization, how do we inspire our leaders? We inspire our leaders by taking the pressure off of them and saying they don't have to have all the answers. They have to trust their people. And the more they can trust their people and move their people forward, the more likely they are going to be successful, because we're removing the bureaucracy. We're removing the need for them to double and triple check everything, because we're holding individuals accountable and having them own their own projects. And I'm hearing some of you say, Tracy, that's not possible. There's no way I can trust the guy because he came in and he can't even swing a hammer. Or there's no way I can trust this individual because they sent something out with 72 spelling errors the other day. Well, here's the deal. If they believe there's always a safety net there, they're probably not going to do it on their own. If their hand has been slapped every single time a mistake has happened versus having them own it, they're not currently in a situation where they're being held accountable for those things and given the ability to step into being their best self and doing their best work. So let's really kind of look at these three areas we're going to talk about today. So organizational design, which is how are we creating value through the structures, systems, and people in our organization. I really want you to think about this through project work. So these are creating, inclusive teams that are going to execute a specific project. Because when we have all these other teams, we've got safety, we've got project management, we've got HR, we have accounting, yada, yada, all the different layers, we're adding additional levels of bureaucracy without really even realizing it. So how do we create project teams where we can build these ideas and build these systems that are absolutely necessary into the project team, which means that we are going to, develop the programs. We're going to train on the programs. We're going to let individuals make the decisions at the lowest level possible. And that a lot of times will look like them coming and saying, hey, this is what I intend to do, right? The intent-based leadership. And, where that really came from is Turn the Ship Around, right? With Dave Marquette. And, what is that intention that the individuals have? And does that align with the business outcomes and the business results that we're looking towards in our organization? So one of the things that we've done really successfully with our clients when we're designing teams is we're asking them a series of questions. And one is, what is the problem that the business is solving? Two, what is the problem that the team is solving? And how does that align to the problem that the organization is solving? So, and you've heard me say this before, right? So we're going to start at the top. What does the organization do? Then we're going to go down to the team level. Then we're going to go down to, the individual level, and everything has to align up. Then we're going to look at what traits do we need on this team to execute the strategy. So let me give you an example. So if we have a very specific project team that is, let's say, building a house, right? So we need to have somebody that is going to lead that project team. And when I say lead that, they're essentially setting a timeline, they're setting what needs to happen, they're working with others with that, but they're that key person that the individuals on that team is working directly with. So these are self-managing teams, right? So they're working within this team. They know exactly what they need to do. They know the budget, they know the timeline, they know what the plan is. Those things are absolutely outlined at the very, very beginning. Remember what we said that came from, a McKinsey study, which is the most important step is having a clear, compelling, and well-designed strategy. So when these teams go to work, they're already given a clear, compelling, and well-designed strategy that they need to execute. That's allowing them to play to their strengths within that and get rid of all the bureaucracy of all the other things that are happening around that, because it's within that self-contained team. And then, so it's knowing what are the traits we need on this team. And so we need the executor, right? Hey, and then we also need, what are the specific things, the specific jobs that individuals are doing? Well, we know we need a carpenter. We know we need an architect. We know we need an electrician. We know we need a plumber. We know we need a drywaller, right? We know we need a painter. We know we need somebody to put siding on the house. We know we need somebody to lay the tile. We know so we have that list of things that need to happen, and they are assigned in a way, or somebody may say, hey, you know what? These are the things that, I've always built things, but I've never finished them, let's say, from the drywall and the mudding and the painting. And maybe that's something they want to take on, or maybe it's not. But it's aligning what are their strengths? How do we get them to the edge of their work, right? So that they can get in that process of flow and really get things done and be proud of it, right? And that's something so important, is when we can complete that project and be proud of it, how are we celebrating those key successes? So again, those 5 questions, I'm going to read them again just so you have them, is what is the problem the business is solving? What is the problem the team is solving? What traits do you need on the team to execute the strategy? What skill sets do you need on the team to execute the strategy? Then you need to look at the jobs on the team and what do the specific jobs or functions need. So we've talked about how do we design it, putting it into project-based work so we have a very clear beginning, middle, end. You know what? And we can focus on what we're doing right now versus all the things that are in front and all the things that are behind. Because when we focus on too much, we go into overwhelm and we stop. And our people do that too. So the third kind of topic that we want to talk about today is designing the culture of our work. And we want to give individuals the tools and the container to do their best work. Johan Hari in Stolen Focus talks about how we as a society are decreasing our competence by doing so much that we're no longer innovating. So when designing your teams and your workplace structure, are you giving individuals the key goals that they need and allowing them to focus on only one thing at a time? because when we can focus on just one thing at a time without constant pings and polls and everything else, we're much more likely to get that thing done and get it done incredibly well because we're focused. We want to have a goal that is meaningful to that person, right? So what's meaningful to that person so that they can do that? One of the examples that Johan gives that I absolutely love, he said, hey, if a frog is focused on a fly, they're going to pay much more attention to the fly than they are going to a rock. Why? Because the fly is meaningful to them because the fly is lunch. The rock isn't going to do anything for them. So when we think about that, when we're designing our structure and designing our organization, we need to ensure we're putting the people in the right roles based on what's meaningful to them. And this is an alignment between personal career goals and what the organization needs out of the job, right? We need to make sure we're aligning those things together. And then the third thing that Johan talks about is ensuring that the goals are at the edge of our ability. It's not too easy and it's not too overwhelming. And when we're designing teams, that's what we can do is we can design it so we're at an edge, but it's not too much, right? And this becomes a part of talent pathway planning, which you've heard us talk about on this podcast before, and I'm sure will again. So as we close out our conversation today, the key things that we were focusing on as we design our teams and really ensure that our managers and leaders in our organization have the ability to lead those teams really well is ensuring that that structure is in place for them, right? So how we design has a significant impact. When we're designing, we want to ensure we have clear, compelling, and well-designed strategy. When we look at it in terms of project work versus just a job, we're able to have very clear beginning, middle, end, and motivate individuals during these shorter sprints so that they can complete those things and celebrate the successes. When we look at the culture of the work that we're designing, ensuring that we are designing it so that it's meaningful to the person and the organization, the alignment that we talked about at the beginning, and that we're focusing on one thing at a time, and that we're ensuring we're not overwhelming folks with too much at once. So with that being said, a key takeaway for our executives listening in is be clear on what you're asking individuals to do. Ensure that they understand it and that it fits the goals of the organization so that you, as the executive, can hit those key goals. And then the second piece is to create structures, and the second piece is for HR, is to create the structures that allow teams to work independently with accountability. So we want to get hyper-focused on clarity and alignment so that you can reward the right things, right? As HR, so often we're focused on things that aren't important to the executive, or we feel like we're in a sandwich between what our staff needs and what our organization needs. And when we can get really clear on what that is and reward the things that are most important to the individuals. And next month, we're talking about diagnose. How do we understand what people need and want? We'll circle back around to this during that conversation. So with that being said, I hope that you have a fantastic week. If you have not yet checked out our membership program, our talent optimization membership program, we hold office hours once a week on Mondays at 1:00 Central. If you are looking for a little bit of additional support with what you're doing in designing your teams, your strategic and your tactical HR questions, or anything related to predictive index, that membership program will give you additional trainings that go deeper into what we do on our podcast, along with that live support on a weekly basis. Check that out on our page, and we will see you next week. Thanks so much.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Talent Optimization Podcast. You'll find more tools and resources for CEOs and HR professionals looking to bridge the strategies versus implementation gap of talent optimization at elevatedtalentconsulting.com. We've also created a free, valuable resource for you to begin bridging the gap called the Talent Optimization Foundation Membership Program. You can access it for free at elevatedtalentconsulting.com/foundation. Be sure to tune in next week for another episode to learn more about talent optimization and creating a dream team for your organization.